Reset. Oh, it's really loud tonight. All right. I'd like to call to order the October 13th, 2025 Committee of the Whole regular board meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. Those who are able to please rise and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. I'd like to welcome everyone joining us in person this evening and anyone who's viewing remotely from home or elsewhere. The board held an executive session on October 8th regarding personnel and as well prior to this meeting regarding personnel. Board members with an agenda before you, do you have any changes? Okay. So we're going to have a roll call from the board secretary of board members, please.
Dr. Anderson?
Here.
Dr. Bader?
Here.
Dr. Barlow?
Here.
Dr. Crevecoeur? Here. Ms. Huff?
Here.
Dr. Miller?
Present.
Okay, we're going to move on to communications. As this is our, what did you want to add?
No, they're telling me it's cold.
You made people cold in the back. It was stuffy up front, to be honest. All right. So this is our first meeting in October, and I'd like to take a moment to recognize National Principals Month and express the board's appreciation for the many outstanding contributions of our school principals and administrators. Their leadership and dedication play a vital role in the success of our students and schools. October is also National Bullying Prevention Month. Recently, we were honored to welcome Dr. Susan Swearer, a leading researcher and psychologist specializing in bullying prevention and intervention, to assist the district in cultivating a positive climate in our schools. Dr. Swearer conducted a district-wide survey and facilitated in-person focus groups as part of an external review of our bullying prevention and intervention policies, as well as the community's sense of our program's effectiveness. We look forward to reviewing the results of this important work at an upcoming board meeting. And finally, October is National Learning and Development Month, a reminder of the importance of fostering lifelong learning at any age, or at every age. I'd like to now recognize Teresa Ganow, who will be retiring in February after 25 years in the district. On August 2001, Teresa was hired as a kitchen helper at Coral Street Elementary. She went on to spend her entire SCASD career in food services, eventually becoming food service supervisor at the high school. Quote, "It's not an exaggeration to say that Teresa will be impossible to replace," said Megan Shaper, Director of Food Services. After working at Coral Street, Teresa became kitchen manager at Radio Park Elementary, a position she held for 10 years before moving to the high school. At State High, she helped design and open the high school food court, Shaper said. She has especially excelled at guiding her team to provide excellent food and exceptional customer service to the high school community, Shaper said. Teresa will be missed, but she has laid a solid foundation for the high school food service program. We wish her health and happiness as she moves on to other adventures. The board also thanks Teresa for her service and wishes her the best in retirement. And now I'd like to call on Mr. Johnson for his superintendent update.
Thank you. The district is looking to immediately fill numerous athletic coaching vacancies for the upcoming winter and spring sessions. We need coaches for girls wrestling, girls and boys basketball, swimming, girls lacrosse, and softball. These positions are at the high school and middle school levels. To learn more or apply, click the employment link on the district homepage. So anybody interested in being a coach, please apply. Thank you.
Thanks. I'd like to now call on Madison Bordenstein to provide this evening's student update.
Yes, thank you. The annual Mount Nittany Middle School and Mount Nittany Elementary clothing giveaway will offer free, gently used clothing, coats, shoes, boots, and accessories from infant to XXL sizes for our students and their families. The event will take place the weekend of October 18th to the 19th in the Mount Nittany Middle School cafeteria at 656 Brandywine Drive. Backpacks, bedding, household items, toys, books, and sports gear will also be available, all free of charge. We invite anyone in the community to come between 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday, October 18th, and noon to 3 p.m. on Sunday, October 19th. For anyone wishing to donate any of the items listed above, they may be dropped off at Mount Nittany Middle School from 4 to 6 p.m. on Friday, October 17th, and 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday, October 18th. When the event is over on Sunday, all remaining items will be donated to Goodwill of Northern Central PA. We hope that many of you are able to take advantage of the wonderful opportunity.
Thank you. This has been a nice tradition for a number of years now. Next up, we have legislative update. Jackie, do you have anything you'd like to share this evening?
So I'd just like to share that there is no state budget and there is no federal budget. And so the state is 100 days plus beyond its own deadline at this point. Many school districts have started taking loans from the state to help cover their costs. Of course, we are very lucky that we are not in the situation that we have the cash to cover our costs for now. But it is important to note that the state is charging interest of 4.5% right now to school districts who are taking a loan. The Senate bipartisan passed a bill that would raise or lower that interest rate to 0% for any loans taken during the budget impasse. But right now, schools that are taking loans from the state are on the hook to pay interest to the state for the budget that they did not pass. Stay tuned.
I would also add that in the federal government shutdown and the reported layoffs, there have been significant reports of layoffs at the Department of Education, including elementary and secondary offices and oversight, that the majority of staff have been furloughed, and that I think only one article I saw reported only 3 managers remain in the special ed department completely. So the U.S. K-12 special ed department has almost no staff now. So I don't know how that will impact the administration of the sizable budget that they manage and that oversight, but personally I find that incredibly distressing. So that I would add, while that's not technically legislative, it certainly has significant impact for all school districts, both in our state and the country.
Amy, I would add those were actually layoffs in the,
Yeah.
in the
Oh,
special
as opposed to furlough.
education.
Yeah, there was a difference.
They
between
weren't
the two.
furloughs, they were actual layoffs.
Thanks. That's a good clarification. I should not interchange those so readily. All right. With that, we'll move on to Center Region Council of Governments. Peter and Gretchen are out this evening. Jesse, did you have anything to add? I don't know if you've met since the last
They
time.
haven't met since our last meeting, and I have nothing to add to the report that I gave.
Sounds great. So at this time, we have an opportunity for public comment. Each individual will be allotted up to 3 minutes for items related to board business that are not consent or action items on the agenda for this evening. For those items, public comment will be held just prior to voting on that item. Do we have any advanced signups for public comment this evening? Okay, none. So then do we have anyone here in person who's interested in making a public comment this evening? How about anyone online? No. Okay. Last call. All right, we'll move on from public comment then, and we'll get started with our Committee of the Whole portion of the agenda. We're going to start with Culture, Climate, and Learning Committee. This administrative curriculum team is going to provide us an update on the 2024-2025 Acadians benchmark and measures of academic progress, often referred to as the MAP testing results that we do with students. Thanks, everybody. We'll give you certainly a minute to get all set up.
Good evening. We're here to share our MAP and Acadians data. This is part of our annual update for data that we are scheduled to provide. Look, our first several slides are slides that we share with you every year. So just to be clear, MAP data, which is what we're going to go over first this evening, is used at the school and classroom level to guide instruction, to allow teachers to modify in order to better support students. We issue MAP 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring, with the idea that we are looking for student growth over time. And as we look at MAP data this evening, we want to keep in mind that this data shows achievement and growth compared to students nationally who are similar to the students in our district who are taking this test. Additionally, we want to be sure to mention that MAP is an interim benchmark. As I mentioned, we give it 3 times a year. When we look at our data, the 50th percentile is considered to be the national norm for growth and achievement. Overall, as we look at our MAP data this evening, I want to be sure to tell you that our data is commendable, that our students are performing strongly on MAP tests, and also want to keep in mind that the higher a student scores in terms of growth, the more challenging it is for them to demonstrate future growth. So just keeping in mind some of those things, and I'm going to pass it to Chris Merritt, who is going to share with you some of our national trends as well as some of the changes that were made to MAP for this year.
So each year before we begin, the past several years, we've taken a minute to just kind of compare some or share some national statistics and some national data. You might remember I shared, I think, the NAEP exam last year. The class of 2024 nationally who entered high school shortly after the pandemic started in the spring, 22% of seniors were proficient or above math, which was down from 24% in 2019, and 35% were proficient in reading, down from 37% in 2019. Those are pretty stark numbers. Nationally, we continue to see overall declines in math and reading proficiency post-pandemic. SCASD has not experienced the dramatic results that are seen nationally. Some of our results do reflect similar trends, but they are not nearly as severe as the national data that we see.
And Chris, just because I had to refresh my memory, because I often get NAEP and then NWEA confused.
Yes.
So the national, just for the public, the national, and for new board members, the NAEP is like a sample that is taken nationwide. So
Correct.
our students may not, I don't know if our students have even ever participated.
They have.
They have.
They have.
Yeah,
So
but
they
not
will-
regularly every year. So it's not data that we can look at sequentially for our own students. It's the sample data from
It's
across
just a
the country.
national data point that they share.
Just so parents aren't just like, well, I never saw those results
Yeah.
for my kids, so we don't always get a
We
chance
were
to
not
participate.
selected last year to take that. It's been several years since we were selected as a host school for that.
Oh, were we
Alright.
this year?
All right,
What
okay.
they do
well.
is they pick, sorry for interrupting, but you get an announcement and it says you have been chosen, and Spring Creek Elementary's 4th grade was chosen, and then Dr. Brigman and Justin Hetrick have been working through. It is strictly online now. The last time it was here was at Ferguson Township, and Mrs. Buckholtz administered. They actually bring their people in.
And they
like
do.
we are hands off, and it is the students are taking this test. They have their own monitor, so that will be happening at one school, one grade this year.
Okay. That's helpful. I just had forgotten, and
Yeah.
I had to really
Yeah.
refresh my memory on what it was, so I
They
just
they
thought I'd-
select the schools each year, and it's kind of a random assortment. Moving on, there are 2 new factors that we're going to keep in mind this year when we look at our MAP results. NWEA, the company that publishes the MAP assessment that we give to students in SCASD, changed to a new form, and they actually allowed us to opt in last year if we wanted to, and we did. We chose to opt in last year, but it's a new form that, called ESA. This year, it would not have been optional. So we decided to be early adopters and use it last year. It's called the Enhanced Item Selection Algorithm. The change provides more grade level questions and less jumping around in content for the student and who's taking the test. Students get 43 questions, and it's supposed to diagnose a little more carefully and be more nuanced where students are in their learning. The new norms for 2025 is the measuring stick that they use to look at data, like how students are doing, how they're growing in SCASD and compared to the national students who took this exam. The learning context of schools has changed a lot since the pandemic, as you all know. And the last update in norms was 2020, which is right before the pandemic hit, which I think is one of the reasons the data looked pretty concerning if you were looking at that and thinking that the sky was falling. And that's why we shared last year that they did NWEA did a very large study and found that there are lots of, that schools were in a very different place than they were pre-pandemic. The ESA format is kind of interesting. It's a better logarithm where students get more grade level questions. And again, so less jumping around for students. It has a stronger connection to core instruction, stronger connection to our standards, and increases its content validity when we look at the results. Nationally, the achievement distribution has shifted down. Nationally, the growth norms have shifted down for reading and are more variable in math, depending on where the student falls in the distribution. The national trend across grades is that lower achieving students show steeper declines than higher achievers. I don't think this is surprising to any of us. The new norms are favorable to our district in that we see less of the variation, less of the dip. So our scores look a little stronger with the new norms than they would with the old norms. The new norms were applied to the 24-25 data. As what we're going to share tonight, this data is from last school year. Overall, we see an increase in student growth and achievement over past years. The most notable are higher district median achievement and growth in all quartiles, top, middle, and lowest quartile. This is a big one. Also noticeable is that 11 schools, saw high achievement and high growth compared to last year where there were only 5. We see positive growth for ethnicity and gender groups, and our representative from NWEA attended our administrative meeting on September 19th to review the new norms and our SCASD fall data reports and looking at some of the new tools available within the program. And now I'm going to turn it over for our data.
So in the first slide that we're looking at this evening, this is data that represents students across the district. So this is, when we look at the green diamond, we're seeing that our reading status and growth is above the average. The same is true for the green triangle, which represents our math status and growth. And then if you look at the black X, that's our district median for our district-wide data. And the big idea to take away from this slide is that in both achievement and growth, we are above national averages.
So, yeah, as far as achievement and growth, do some comparisons here from last year to this year. So moderately above as far as growth is slightly above average. In comparison from last year, you're seeing that this year the median achievement is the 77th, and last year we're at 74th. Comparison to median growth, this year we're at 64 in the percentile. Last year we're at 47% our percentile. Comparison on that chart. Next. This chart shows the reading and math by quartile. So our top quartile growth is the 49th, slightly more than the norm. Our middle 2 quartiles, a growth is slightly higher than the norm. And that lowest quartile, 67th, slightly higher than the norm. One point that I'd like to point out is looking at the chart to the right, the middle 2 quartiles, they're showing the best growth in that area of those 2 quartiles.
Is that usual that math scores are a little easier to bring up than reading scores?
when you say usual, I think there's so many things that are dependent on that.
Well,
Like,
I'm
was there a
sorry,
new
I-
curriculum?
Yeah.
Were there PD? So I guess the answer is yes, maybe, and no.
Oh.
I'm not really sure how to answer that.
Well, now I go away so much more enlightened. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That little humor to the data. So, all right. So moving into this slide here, how the district is doing with achievement status by quartile. Just pointing out the top quartile, 47th is a larger portion than typical. The middle two quartiles, 43%, a smaller proportion than is typical at the 50%. And then lower quartile, 10%, a smaller proportion, which is typical at 25. So that's that area there. And the next one is a 3-year growth.
So basically, I mean, just to help the community understand, the majority of our students are actually in the highest quartile. So that's why we have such lower percentages than the smaller one. I mean, I know we look at these a lot oftentimes, but the community, I remember when I was a first new board member and I didn't understand quartiles at all because it wasn't in my background. So I just think that's a notable thing to comment on, that half of our students are in the top quartile. So that's something we need. And unusual.
And that's on a national average?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was gonna say, like, having more than half the students above average sounds weird because usually average is half above, half below, but this is a national comparison.
National comparison
Okay.
of the students who took math.
So I always find this slide confusing. So another way to look at it for, again, Amy's point about for the public, if you look at the first column, that's the national norms. And that gives you a definition of, if you're looking at quartiles, the top quartile is the top 25% of students nationally. And then that gives you basically a score to say, if you score above that, then relative to the national top quartile, you're doing better. And so when you look at the other ones, that's what it's saying, is in our district, 47% on average score higher than that score, which delineates the top quartile nationally. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but mathematically, that's a little bit more precise, because by definition, you can't have more than 25% of students in your own school in your own top quartile. That's impossible mathematically. So I know. Thanks for.
Thank you. All right. So this slide, longitudinal growth, 3-year comparison, showing the 22 to 23 school year, the percentile 53. There was a dip in 23-24 to 47, but we've seen some slightly above average growth in that percentile up to 64 in the last school year. So showing the bar chart on the right demonstrate that rise and fall there. Next one. So next I'll be talking about the ethnic breakdown here. Let me get to this slide. So just going through just some of the ranges that you'll see here in these breakdowns, ranging from the 41st for African American students, the 88th for Asian students. As far as achievement, as far as growth, we're ranging from 47th for African American students and 65th to Caucasian and Hispanic students, with our largest difference between male and female students in reading and math. Reading for Hispanics would be a point to note. One thing I would like to clarify, we mentioned this last year, as far as the race and ethnic group clarification. Our multiracial group is not being reported as a subgroup. It's being collected in the Caucasian percentage. As we shared before, as we made that transition to PowerSchool away from Synergy, we should be able to get some more granular and more accurate breakdown of that information.
Because these are the terms that NWEA chooses to use, not necessarily like Caucasian, and the categorization is their choices. Yeah.
Correct. So going on to the next slide. This is ethnicity and gender comparison. So I'm going to ask Chris just to quickly toggle between the two charts, and then I'll talk about those. So this is last year. You see less green, a little bit more orange. And if you toggle back to this prior slide, you're going to see more green and gray as far as those numbers increasing over the comparison to last year. Less orange. Some of that we're going to attribute back to the new norms. But for example, the African American females in reading and math, the same group went up by 33 to 66 in math. We're saying that this is not from the new norming. Green is still demonstrating achievement and growth. For example, if you look at the Hispanic males, they grew by 5 points. Would be a demonstration there of that comparison in the orange category. I'm going to pass it to Heather.
And I'm going to be talking about the Acadience Assessment. Now, the Acadience Assessment has been around for roughly about 30 years, and research has been done on it even prior to that. And we use it as a tool 3 times a year, similar to the way in which we look at MAP, but we really focus on those elementary grades to try to get a pinpoint on what's going well across the district, per school, per grade level, and individual students to be able to start to identify in a more proactive way who is going to be likely on track for that next benchmark and who might be at risk of not hitting that next benchmark. And so it's really going to drill down into those foundational skills for both reading and for math in order to help us to drive our decision making in our MTSS framework. So it really helps us to pinpoint what are the groups of students that we need to hone in on, and then what does that growth look like as we provide the instruction and intervention for those students. And then we also use this as another tool for our progress monitoring data, because as you're putting these things into place, we want to make sure that what we're doing is working for our students. And if so, we'll keep doing what we're doing. And if not, then we can make instructional adjustments based upon those. So we utilize Acadience across the board for all of our students in reading for grades kindergarten through 3rd grade. And then we also utilize this as what we call like a drill down or a gatekeeping method to be able to say, you know what, we need a little bit more data on the students who weren't performing the way that we expected them to on the map. Let's figure out if we can see a more holistic picture on this child. So we also use it for those students in grade 4 and 5. And then last year, we also started to incorporate Acadience data for math in grades kindergarten through 5 for all of our students. And so this is going to now include things like computation and application for our students in order to give a more holistic picture on how we're doing mathematically. So on the next slide, I'll just orient you here to what you're going to see in the next set of slides here. This one is on kindergarten reading. And if you're looking across the top, those are all of the scores for last year, 2024, 2025. And you'll see it, since we do it 3 times a year, you're going to see those scores beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. Now, if you're looking closely at those, you can see those little things that are like oval shapes, and those have the actual scores and the number of actual students who fell into each of those categories. But realistically, we can just get a nice big snapshot tonight by just looking at the thing that looks more like a fan with all of those pretty colors. And you see there's a lot of blue. We want to see a lot of blue and a lot of green, and we do within our district. And so as we cut across here, I also encourage you to kind of look between last year and the year before, so kind of look for those color trends as we flip through these slides. But I also want you to take note of the fact that the blue and the green, that's what we're aiming for. We see a lot of that. As a matter of fact, we're looking at about 80% of our students hitting those benchmarks in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade. And you'll notice it stops at 3rd grade because, again, we're not collecting the data for all of the students in 4th and 5th grade, so it wouldn't be a fair and accurate representation if we looked at that for 4th and 5th grade. Now, I know some of you are probably wondering, but what about the cohorts? This was following a different set of kids last year. If we look at this from kindergarten, that's a different set of students from 1st grade and so on. So what we've also done is we've collected the data historically to be able to show you what was happening in each of those cohorts across each one of those grade levels. Now, we started this back in 2021, 2022. So you see the color coding across the board there for each of our cohorts, cohort 1, 2, and 3 being that first set who started way back in 2021 and 22. And then cohort 4 begins in 2022, 2023, and we're able to follow them up until this year. Cohort 5 started in 23, 24 for kindergarten, and we've only been able to see them over the course of 2 years. And then, of course, cohort 6 is our new cohort that we'll be able to follow. So I like this one because you can look across to see what the trends are, as well as up and down, to be able to get a feel for whether or not we're following the cohort or the grade level. And I think one of the things that we can note in here is that we're maintaining relative status, that you're going to see about 80% of our students, give or take a few, are going to be meeting our benchmarks regardless of the cohort or the grade.
Hi, I love data. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I like beautiful charts as well. So, like the benchmark, like what is being measured is changing from grade to grade to grade. Is it changing within, like, from the beginning to the middle to the end?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It can change, and that does create complexity, so we have to be very attuned to what the measures are and what is the story that it's helping to tell us about the students in a given point in time. And so we look at the individual subtests that are within those in order to help us to drive the instruction and to figure out what's going well and what do we have to change.
Right. So this kind of like 20,000-foot view isn't necessarily helpful. It's really when you drill in that you can see what's going on.
In terms of decision making at an instructional level for like the in the moment, absolutely. And it can still inform our decisions, kind of big picture in terms of what's going well instructionally, because even though those are working on distinct sub-skills, they're still foundational skills as a collective package that we can look at as a holistic unit that can help us to figure out what are the things that we're doing well.
Thank you.
Yep. Jackie, if you look at, or everybody, if you look at slide 25, the one that Heather was just on, we recognize, if you really drill down, in first grade you talk about the test. Oral reading fluency is a sub-test in the winter of first grade, and it's the first time that children have to read a passage, and they are ranked on how many words and how accurate, so fluency and accuracy. A lot of the sub-tests in kindergarten, phoneme segmentation, words like that. And we are keeping, if you look at the blue, we are pretty consistent from kindergarten to first to second to third that are advanced in that are staying advanced. But if you really look at the end of first grade, we lose some of our proficient students. So this year, curriculum's worked. We're trying to look at some things to determine how are there skills that we can kind of forefront for at the end of kindergarten or first grade in reading so that we're not seeing that dip, because once we have that dip, it's taking us a couple years to regain those proficient students back to that drop down back to proficient. So that was when we started doing this data, one of the big ahas that we saw with that. I'm going to jump into math as well. We did begin using Acadience, and one thing that Chris shared is that MAP is a norm reference test. So our students are compared to other students who take MAP. Acadience is a criterion reference test, which means it's a set of skills that they expect mastery. So everybody, universal, has to hit the same target to be deemed the same rate. So they are done, as Heather said, through years and years of evidence. In the math, I think I talked about this last year, there are two subtests in math. There is a computation subtest and a concepts and analysis. And as we are working through our curricular review and some of the other things, and just like the science of reading, we've been looking at different things with math, and the computation piece is something that we've recognized in some of this data that is maybe pulling our scores down. So we've added some little supports, some interventions throughout this year to support with some of that procedural fluency, the automaticity as far as facts, and then as we work through the curriculum, that's one of our goals. So this predictor, very much like Heather said, we stay pretty consistent as we go through, and I'll just go through, you're going to look. So from last year to this year, we've had pretty consistent data, but you'll see that we do lose some ground from the different beginning of the years to the end of the year in some of our primary. If you go to second grade, we really want to continue to see the blue and the green, and then we're targeting the skills of all of those students. We started 2 years ago when we recognized the computation concern assessing everybody in 4th and 5th grade math to try to collect this data. I don't know that we'll continue that. That'll be a curricular decision once we, or a team decision once we adopt a new curriculum, see what additional resources we have, and see if we can focus on both computation and the concepts and analysis within the math class. So I will not spend a lot of time on each graph, but we will show you the graph that we've been collecting just as a kind of a study. We started this to say, are we following, are we consistent? And the reason on this one, if you take a look, you'll see BOY, or beginning of the year for kindergarten on some of the graphs, and then EOY, or end of the year for kindergarten, but then we only give you the end of the year for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. The reason we did that is we were trying to pinpoint where are we losing some students, so what do we need to do, again, to maybe forefront, or what can we do? And we're noticing, although we still have pretty strong levels of math students, that's some of the areas that we want to look at with our kindergarten students. Do we need to stretch when our students are ready to be stretched? Can we grow them a little bit more? What does that look like? So we're reviewing this data as well as we work with our math committee and make plans for a new resource adoption, a new curriculum adoption, and then how do our math practices look in elementary school beginning next year? What changes will we make? I guess just as a conclusion slide, we have, of course, all of us, our teachers, our students are committed to really doing their best. We really are looking at continued recovery, growing every student to the best of their potential. We're using our MTSS frameworks. We're focusing on instructional strategies, as we talked about. With our future ready goals, especially goal number 1, our principals in their buildings are really focusing on their race and ethnicity data as they drill down, making sure that we are giving everybody equal opportunities, trying to continue to align our resources. And then this year we've done, as Chris said, we've had some MAP representatives come in. We're actually going to continue to talk about MAP now that the students have taken the fall, and how to use that to help our teachers plan and focus on differentiated techniques to get the students where they are and grow them to where they can.
If I can come back to Dr. Barlow's question real quick. Math is more variable, and it would depend on which quartile you're in. And I think it can be more challenging sometimes in older grades to fill in the foundational gaps that you don't have in English and reading. Because the texts aren't designed well for that. So if you don't have those foundational skills and you go to middle school and then high school, it's harder to fill in those gaps over time. I think it can be a little bit easier in math, depending on, again, in which quartile you're in. But there's more variability in the scores in math than there is in reading. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I had to come back to your question.
That's the kind of answer I was looking for, and I get why the answer is yes, no, and maybe. There are parts of it that are yes, parts that are no, and parts that are because of variability, maybe.
Yeah. Aaron?
Yeah. If we could just go back a minute, I'm curious about, and I understand that this is the system changing it, not us, but this change in the enhanced item selection algorithm. I'm a little confused by that, just because it says this change provides grade level questions. But in theory, this is trying to identify the math or reading ability of a student regardless of, like, grade level is kind of an arbitrary point, right? So how is that restricting the possible range of scores that students could have?
It is tightening the range down, especially in the beginning of that exam, so that you're not experiencing wild swings. You might get the first question right, and it would have given you something much, much harder. It's it's pulling from a bank.
Right.
And the idea is that in 43 questions, it's going to be able to help pinpoint where you are as a learner,
right,
for math, and where you are in reading. And so, and that is looking at the grade level standards of Common Core. I will say that I don't think any test is a great predictor of someone's potential. So that's not what we use it for.
Yeah.
We use it as just one of our tools in our toolbox and looking for who needs intervention or who is not being challenged enough. And I think that those are really a really good use of this tool, and also to look at how is our curriculum, how does it seem to be holding up when students take a curriculum neutral kind of test?
Right. So I'm just
Assessment.
wondering if they start with, say, they're a third grade student, they start with a set of third grade level questions. Does that limit the potential, like, does it have a ceiling effect for the types of questions that can receive in that 43 question, or is it's just a bit more streamlined?
It's more streamlined, and
Okay.
and it will lead them
Just to
there.
make it less confusing.
Just less confusing.
Okay.
So you don't get a question you could get so easily, and then you get one that's
You
so
don't- you're
hard.
right. So you don't go
You're
ad-
struggling, and then you get another one that's easy.
Addition to integers to
Yes.
So is it
whatever.
more about the student's experience? Because
Yes,
I
it
know,
is.
I can still recall when, the kids were, it's because if a kid has it easy and then an incrementally hard one.
Yes.
At these young ages, kids could give up and really
it's a
feel
kind
like.
of a defeatist kind of
so-
activity if you.
So then it's not a true assessment if they yo-yo so severely in
And
the
this
first couple,
test-
potentially if they get unlucky and they get that, it
They
would
are
shut them down.
designed to get half of the questions wrong. Like in this test, this isn't like any other kind of assessment that we give. They will get half wrong. It's just a matter of how high it will go before.
Right. It's looking for the true score, and you
Right.
have to get questions wrong, otherwise
Right.
it doesn't know where you stop.
It's
right?
not about getting 100% on this.
No. You're just not going from like reading Clifford to reading Faust to
Exactly.
going, oh, nope, that's too hard, we'll go back to this.
Right.
And I think it's more helpful for teachers as well, because they're looking at how are my students performing within the grade based on national norms and expectations. So when teachers are looking to modify assessment or identify students who might need help or who might need more advanced choices, basing it on what's in the grade level can be helpful.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because there are some students that they have to be in a different grade level to be getting what they need anyway, sometimes.
Sure.
I guess on that note, and I should know the answer to this, but I don't remember, if you do have a student who's going to a different grade for their math class, are they taking the MAP for their grade level or for their math class level?
They're taking the 6+. It's a range.
I guess it's a range, but there's a point at which it goes to a higher level
Sixth grade,
MAP?
it changes to 6+.
Okay, and so the fifth graders that are taking sixth grade math,
Yep. They would take the earlier one.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Kai, you have a question? Oh, no? Okay, sorry. I thought it was a raised hand. Others on the side of the table? I guess I have a question. So we've kind of looked at our global MAP data, right? But we give MAP from very early, first grade, all the way up to ninth. So, and I'm not asking for a longer evening where you give us the breakdown of every grade. But I guess, to kind of just briefly touch on the fact when we kind of quickly went through some of our drill down information because we were looking at the whole district and that, so we all know that there could be pockets of problems, right? So some of this data could be impacted by a specific area where certain classes of students may be struggling the most, or it could be distributed across all those grade levels. And so the only way we know that is by what you guys are probably doing on the back end of drilling down. But I just wanted to talk about that briefly for the community, for them to know that those are things that are happening. Like for me, when I look at particularly at the Hispanic reading information, we know we have some transient nature of some students, particularly in that demographic, oftentimes in our community. And so that may play a role in what happens with our data from year to year. And so those are all things I know that you guys are looking at in other places and other ways. So tonight we're kind of talking about this overarching look at our data, but there's a lot more that's going on for you guys to tease out and work on and that you're doing. So it's hard to fully interpret some of those concerning areas without being able to look at some of those other pieces of the puzzle, which you're doing. So,
And Amy, if I could say, our Future Ready school comp plan, so every principal really works through them. That is the great thing, and we have a work session in February where you'll get to hear from our principals, because we have pockets in schools too. So curriculum's like, wait a second, how can we be this overall in this grade, but at this school? So is it curricular? Is it, what is it? And that's what we really task the principals on, to really drill down. The MTSS teams are putting that data right in what we call data forms, and then using it to respond. So that is an excellent question, or anybody that comes to the work session, that they would really be able to answer as far as pockets at each grade level. And then district-wide, we can look at that too when we do pull it.
Yeah, I would say, I think as a board member, it might be helpful, because now, when we started with MAP, it was only like 3rd through 5th, I believe, and then we kind of went lower, and then we started going higher, and then we've gotten all the way up to 9th grade. And now that we are starting to have that amount, those number of grades of data for over a longitudinal period of time, I think it might be helpful for the board to start to see a little bit of that breakdown, not necessarily on a grade level perspective, but perhaps either bands of grades, or elementary versus middle versus, or middle and 9th grade, because it's a very different beast at 6 through 9 versus, especially when we're looking at reading. The skills that we're teaching in elementary reading is very different than perhaps the remediation or the capture of students that are struggling that we are needing to do at the middle level. And so I think knowing where maybe some of this data is impacted, is it happening at the middle level, or is it happening at elementary? To your point about how do we allocate resources, I think that's probably important information for the board to understand, to help as we, as you propose changes in resources or staffing or other things. That would be kind of key data to back up those decisions. Okay, that's all I had questions about MAP, and just a little bit of where that some of those things fall out. Other questions from board members? Or our students? No? Okay. Thanks very much. That was really helpful. And I always love looking at reading data. We're going to move on to facilities and grounds. We're going to start off with district-wide facilities master plan greenhouse gas inventory update. And Mike Fisher is going to provide those updates, as well as other agenda items on our list, like the Mount Nittany Elementary project. And then some Park Forest Middle School stuff. We have Jeff Straub joining us tonight, I see.
Oh, wait, maybe this one. I don't know. I got a new computer the other day, so I hate getting a new computer. Because this kind of stuff happens.
Is it play music and like have video and all kinds of extra bells and whistles?
I will put up with a lot with an old computer.
Change is hard.
Okay, so as part of our facilities master plan, we contracted with a third party to do a greenhouse gas inventory. Basically, we looked at so the greenhouse gas inventory. I wasn't an expert at it at the time, but I am now apparently. So there's kind of basically a brief overview. There's 3 scopes, right? Scope 1 really looks at our direct emissions. Basically, purchased our burnt natural gas or propane that we might use. 2 is indirect, more purchased emissions such as electricity. And the same thing with kind of our bus fleet, our third-party bus fleet. And then scope 3 really is, for these purposes, our solid waste. There's some other stuff in scope 3 that really aren't applicable, such as fugitive emissions, wastewater treatments, which we don't have, right? Also in scope 3, one thing we didn't look at that could be in scope 3 is emissions from employee commutes, right? So that's something we really dove into. So we're going to kind of go through this. I'm going to focus on a couple of the different slides. There's a lot of kind of data in here, and it's organized a few different ways. There's just a few here that we're really going to kind of focus on. So First is, here's kind of our scope, how it's kind of broken out over the last 4 years. We were able to get back 4 years. And again, this kind of just gives an overview of kind of where we were in the different scopes from year to year, and along with the definition of the scopes, right? But really, like kind of my definition there is kind of this very, very simplified for everybody. And then, so here's a really good graphic, probably the best graphic, I think, in the report. So what we see here, so looking at all scopes, right? From 21 to 24, we're seeing about a 15, 17% reduction in facilities and grounds. So again, that's really our energy use. So that is natural gas, propane, electricity, okay, over the 4-year period. Transit fleets, you may look at 21 and 22 and think, well, kind of what is that? Well, that was the COVID years. So that date is a little wonky. And then solid waste is pretty flat. And you might say, well, we didn't have as many kids. I wasn't here during COVID, but there weren't kids here. So solid waste is calculated based on basically number of pickups and the actual size of our dumpsters, okay? So we don't have actual tonnage slips, for each time, right? The garbage truck comes, they pick it up, it goes into the larger truck with everybody else's garbage, and it gets dumped, right? So that's really what we have to go off of. If the district wanted to pursue that in a more granular level, there would be scales involved, and it could be done. It's just a much, much larger lift with a capital investment. So, or a lot of time. So really the trends is kind of what I would expect. As I look at our energy use, kind of it goes hand in hand with our greenhouse gas for buildings and facilities. This is really what I would have expected to see. And again, solid waste, amount of pickups, again, kind of flat over the 4-year period. Also what I would expect to see. I should note that, so we've reached out to a lot of contacts and trying to find something to benchmark against, right? Because what do these numbers mean? Are these numbers good? Are they bad? I can't answer that, right? So we're still looking to try to benchmark against something. I've been working with Pam Adams from the county. She reached out to a contact, I think at DEP, and he thought we were the first one in Pennsylvania to actually do this sort of inventory from a K through 12 standpoint. I haven't validated that, but so we're having trouble finding something to validate. I would like to validate against kind of square footage, right? Another K through 12 facility. It doesn't help to benchmark against a manufacturing plant or a community because it's so different, right? So we're still working towards that. I'd actually like to see those numbers. I'm curious now. So if we find that, or when we find it, we'll share that out. So we can all see kind of how we're doing against peers. So that's kind of the high level of this. Any questions?
Go ahead, Jackie.
Does the transit fleet include just like our buses that are sitting in our bus?
It is third party
It's
as
third
well.
party as well.
Vans, field trips, yep, everything.
All right, thank you.
So it's based upon mileage of both ours and third party, of all vehicles to transport students.
And even though we can't benchmark, I feel like it's good yellow is going down over time.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yes. So
Right.
like compared to
It's
ourselves.
trending in the right direction.
Yes. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was interpreting that correctly. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I'll hold mine to the end. Other questions? So, Mike, I think it would be really helpful to add to the memo that fact that you brought up about solid waste, because I think that's really key to be part of the documentation for the community. Because, like you said, we don't have a way. It's really just, did we buy any more new dumpsters that we need? So I think that's really important context for that piece of the data. Otherwise, it could be really not you're trying to mislead,
Looks
but it
like
would
we're
be
not
misleading.
recycling as much as
it
we
would
should,
be misleading
right.
to the community, like we're not making any effort there, and there's really
Correct.
no way for us to evaluate that. So I think it would be really important to include that in the documentation. But to Jackie's point about the declining the yellow bands on that over the 21 to 24 period, I've been here too long and seen too many different buildings open, and I'm horrible at years. My dad is like, he can name the year of any event, and I failed at all that. So when we open some of our buildings in comparison to that declining numbers, it seems to me that some of our our newer buildings came on, it would be it's kind of informative. I mean, I know our newer buildings are more efficient, so we would expect it to go down, but we've also kind of increased our footprint to some degree with having some of our newer buildings. So like there's this push-pull between, we might have more space, but we're actually more efficient, and we're seeing those numbers come down. So that'll be interesting to see sometime later about trying to understand how those puzzle pieces fit together. But I know that we're still early in the game.
So this would not include any new buildings coming online?
So we haven't done anything since 2021?
Right.
Okay.
So this is basically, 2021 was the
Right, because
buildings.
your physical plant building would
And
be
even
after.
during, during COVID, the buildings, well, I was at, it probably wouldn't be after, I guess, a little
Yeah.
bit. But, even when kids weren't in school, the buildings were still kept at, reasonable temperatures.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. I'm always just trying to lay that history over and on.
so as a whole, this will get then kind of imported into, along with playgrounds, athletics, our infrastructure assessments, and it will be put into one document that we will have to work off of for the facilities master plan. So everything will be in one place.
Great.
Yeah. I don't have a question, but I do want to recognize that I know a lot of work went into this 10 pages. And so I just want to say thank you for all the work.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of data you could pull for all that.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Mount Nittany Elementary update, quickly. Okay, so we're actually getting started. We're actually putting walls up adjacent to the current building. I know it's a little bit of a headache for some of the staff there, and I apologize for that. We're doing the best we can to minimize disruptions to the learning environments, but we are, moving along. You can see that, hallways are starting to form, and roof ceilings are going up, and roofs, and so we're moving right along. So I mentioned last month that we were about 2 weeks behind. We are still 2 weeks behind, so it hasn't gotten any worse, but it's because of steel deliveries. So right now, the west wing is dried in. Our CMU, the block on the south wing is complete. And then we're still working kind of on electrical, conduit, mechanical throughout the spaces. So it's starting to look like a building. And kind of next steps really is, there's an irrigation system, actually should be just about in now. Mechanical piping, the geothermal wells are all in. They have been inspected, and we're getting those piped into the building right now and getting ready to connect to the current system. And then we're mocking up brick as well, just to take a look, making sure that the mortar, brick color, everything looks like it should. So, questions?
No.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, looks great.
And on to Park Forest. I got it, Jeff. I'm already hooked up. It's working too, so let's just leave it be. And I'll drive. Yep.
Okay, we're going to give an update to Park Forest this evening and really focus on a few schedule, sustainability. We're going to, thank you, Mike. Geothermal and a few slides related to glazing that we're evaluating internally within the building. So current schedule, and I want to note this is tied to the overall land development process that's already also going on at this time. So This is a roadmap. It may evolve in discussions that we've had with everybody involved. Right now, we've completed the 90% submission. That's been board approved. We're now going through, we've had the steering committee, final interior design verification. We've been in contact with Center Region Code Administration about scheduling a sit-down with them. They're already aware of the project, but just giving them a little bit more detail for the overall scope as we prepare tentatively to submit a code submission in the month of December and try to get that to them about a month ahead of time so that we incorporate their comments. We're also going through coordination with SCASD's operations teams, Mike's team, having actually even just I think last Thursday was our last coordination meeting, discussing all systems throughout the building, whether it be IT, specifications, food service, safety and security, really holistically drilling down into the systems of the building and also making sure that that matches up to how facilities will maintain the buildings moving forward. Construction management team is in the process of being engaged at this time. The RFP was released, proposals were received, and we tentatively have interviews scheduled with 3 firms this coming Thursday. And then the goal is to bring forward to all of you a recommendation really with a combination of CAC facilities, administration, and board members that October 27th we would bring a firm forward for approval. Third-party cost estimate is also underway at this time. It's actually tentatively scheduled to be complete in the month of November. In fact, we were just discussing with them today. We may even be a little bit ahead of that. We're going to get preliminary draft the end of October, which is then going to give us some time in November to really proof that out before we bring it forward to all of you. Act 34 hearing and process will be occurring in the month of December and January. And so once we have that cost estimate, we match that up with the overall design. And even though this is not a Department of Education project, we still are required to go through the Act 34 process. So we will be completing some documentation of Plan Con Part A, Plan Con Part D, which is sort of more of the overall floor plan, as well as the financial components of Department of Education. So tentatively, we're looking at mid-November, we would have a draft booklet for review, and then ultimately the board would approve that in the month of December, and then a January Act 34 hearing on the project. Bidding is, we're looking at January and February with the goal of a February-March review of that booklet and potentially a start of construction next March. And again, I want to note this is a roadmap. We're still working through all of our approvals, and so this may adjust, but this is our roadmap that we've sort of given to the whole team. Okay. So next, LEED certification, and we're not going to go through all these line items on the pay or on the next series of slides, but I think we had discussions with the administration of sort of showing this to all of you just to understand the overall level of complexity. We're everything from sustainable sites, local tie-ins with the community. If you go to the next slide. Water efficiency, we're studying both indoor as well as outside of the building. How does that tie into cooling tower use, water metering, energy and atmosphere, so the overall energy model, tying in with the mechanical systems, how does that then coordinate with the roof, the exterior windows that are specified, insulation, as well as renewable energy. We are incorporating a 630 kilowatt solar array as an alternate, which the board has approved as part of the project in the past, along with the grants. Again, that will be as an alternate so that you'll see a very clear price on bid day related to that. And then during construction, we'll also be looking at life cycle cost and tracking all the specific materials, where they're being sourced, materials, recycled content. And then also indoor environmental quality, so everything from air quality testing to acoustics, thermal comfort, lighting levels in the building. And then that sort of wraps up. And one discussion that we had at the board table, or sorry, administratively, to bring forward to all of you, is there's been a lot of discussion of both the North and South building attained LEED Gold certification. The 3 elementary schools recently attained LEED Platinum certification. And there's been a discussion of, are we doing Platinum or Gold on these projects? And really it's not a matter of, are we going from one level to the other? Actually, the same concepts were built into the high school as well as the elementary schools, utilizing this roadmap or this certification plan. And some of the components, for instance, location credits have to, for instance, what's the proximity of local businesses, or ties to Catabus and things of that nature. So depending on where the buildings are located throughout the district, you may see a swing of 5 points one way or the other. Well, that becomes critical because pretty much all the projects we've worked with you have ranged in the mid-high 70s to the low 80s. Well, 80 is the threshold for Platinum. So the takeaway is really Park Forest is going to be sort of on the same level of efficiency, exterior envelope, roof, a mechanical system. We're doing a water source heat pump. In this case, we're going to have a few slides to talk to you about geothermal this evening. And it'll be those small adjustments that'll ultimately determine which way we go. Okay. So what you're seeing now up on the screen is just some analysis that we're doing for each of those credits. We've also been going through this recently and doing final documentation for Mount Nittany School. And so we do part of the paperwork during design so that we can make adjustments if we need to. And then final documentation occurs during the construction. So looking at open space. Next slide. Surrounding density. Oops. And that is the, you can just skip that a couple slides. We're also doing some analysis with the solar that we've spoken about previously. And next slide. So the next piece that we've been looking heavily at, and it's taken really about 6 months to get through the process, is the geothermal related to the project. For instance, Mount Nittany right now, the geothermal wells are going in. You also have that at Ferguson, but we did not do geothermal at the high school, and we did not do geothermal at the 3 elementary schools. And what I would note is we did do water source heat pumps. So the system that's in the building is really the same will be the same in 8 of your buildings. There'll be a closet right next to each classroom, and that feeds the building. The difference is, do we have geothermal wells on the site doing the heat transfer, as we do currently at Mount Nittany, or do we have a cooling tower? And so what we just completed, and if you go to the next slide, Mike, thank you, we just received the final conductivity reports. And unfortunately, the reports are very similar to what we ran into at some of the other elementaries in the high school. The conductivity is not as high as hoped. We've also run into some issues with the soil conditions that typically a geothermal well goes down 400 feet, and that's drilled and you move forward. In this case, because of the poor soils, voids, collapses at very deep depths, we're finding out that we're going to have to case all the wells in steel, which becomes cost prohibitive. What we're approaching is about $5.7 million for that to occur. We're also, because of the poor conductivity, it's about 25% less than Mount Nittany, which is causing us to go from 200 to 245 wells if we would do that. So that increases that further. So ultimately what we're recommending is similar to the high school and the 3 elementaries, to go with a cooling tower for the project. And we're still looking at a very efficient mechanical system. As I mentioned before, the other projects were gold and platinum certification. We just won't have that geothermal well component related to the project. Okay. Glazing discussions. So we talked a little bit on the exterior of the building. We are incorporating bird glass, but we're also looking at the interior glazing. And even there's been some conversations since this slide was generated for board issuance last week. But we're continuing to look at the both the daylighting and glazing from windows from the classrooms into the hallways of the building, as well as at the doors, and side lights going into the classroom. So what you're seeing on the right is a study that we're working on right now. We've raised the windows up to 6 feet. So students still have the ability to shelter. We've actually done those windows even lower and being able to shelter in place. And then next slide, Mike. Oh, no problem. And what we're also doing is a study of the advantage of not only those windows being at that height, but how the heat pump closet is located at the entrance to each classroom creates a natural barrier within the classroom. So what you're seeing on the right in the green is a triangle of essentially a safe lockdown area for the students. They can shelter in place at that location. And even though for instance, we have glazing at the door, the side light, you have no visibility of the students in that condition. So the classroom's locked down, lights are shut off, and essentially the students can fully shelter in place. Okay? And this is continuing to evolve, but that's just sort of an update of where we are right now. Okay? So with that, open it up to questions that you might have.
One question on the sheltering in place. If you go back to your slide 15, with the sight line, that assumes that the individual is standing on the floor, but I think they're
Correct.
standing next to a shelf. So what happens to the sight line if they stand on the shelf?
That is a possibility, but and we're discussing that with the
Okay.
with the administration right now.
Great, thanks.
Let me just comment on that. We've met with the SROs and a former SRO to discuss that very topic. So they had some input on that exact question.
Yeah,
Aaron. I'm just remembering a few weeks ago, Mike, we had a discussion about parking and dealing with the township. Did we come to a resolution about that? Is that part of the plan now?
It's still in the works.
Still in the works.
Still in the works. Right now, we have 220 or 30-ish spaces dedicated, and another 70 would be in like the kind of the bus loop area for after school. So it gives us a total. I think we actually stretched it out to about 320 right
And they
now
wanted,
total.
They
for
wanted
like,
something like 400.
for like after school, correct. And right now, the ordinance is 463.
Right.
So we're working with the township on that.
Yeah. Is there space to add more parking if we have to?
You want to take that?
I mean, sure, I guess. We could remove ball fields, we could remove tennis courts, we could remove lots of trees and do lots of excavation if it was on that site.
Okay.
So those are the options to add more parking on that site.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay. Not at this time. We'll
If
see
not,
how our
if not.
construction management interviews go on Thursday.
Thank you for your time.
Looking forward to being there. Thanks very much, Jeff. All right. So that covers all 3 items in our facilities and grounds agenda. Everybody hanging in okay? Okay. Then let's move on to Joe Vigilone going to join us with an update on the 2024-2025 preliminary financial results for the district.
I did not expect to see that.
Ta-da.
Yeah, I expected to see that. Good evening, everybody. We'll start off on the memo real quickly and then move on to the presentation. Just some key points from the memo. We have been working very closely with the auditors to close out the 24-25 fiscal year. In fact, just today we received the first draft of the balance sheets that we are in the process of reviewing. During the fiscal year 25, the district was incredibly fortunate to experience a positive result, mainly due to revenues exceeding budgetary estimates. almost every volatile revenue source exceeded historical highs identified below. Volatile means one-time money or something that is a factor outside of the district ability to control. A couple items we want to mention is interim real estate taxes. This is newish construction. Fiscal year 25 revenue was $3.2 million. That was nearly 10 times the average of the previous 2 years. Secondly, real estate transfer tax, that was a 30% increase. Okay. That was about a 30% increase on the previous 2 years' averages as well. So those two items, which again are one-time dollars, not annual recurring ones, it's very unexpected. There was also a key change which was outlined on page 2 of the memo. There is a Government Accounting Standards Board pronouncement number 96. It requires us for any long-term software agreements to put the value of the agreement as an expenditure line item, as well as there is a revenue associated with that as well for the recognition of that lease. So it's an in and out, but it will actually have the effect of grossing up both revenues and expenditures to comply with the GASB 96 pronouncement. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, we just got final balance sheets today that could impact, final recommendations coming out from the board if the numbers are changing a little bit from there. So going forward, I will go to the presentation at this point. Again, total revenue was approximately $9 million higher than budgeted. Interim real estate tax was $2.6 million more. Investment income, $2.3 million more. Real estate transfer tax, $1.3 million more. And then the additional state basic education funding was $1.3 million more. If you remember back to last August, September timeframe, when the budget came through, the number was quite a bit higher. Excluding these 4 items, the actual revenue was within 1% of budgetary estimates. Moving on to end-of-year results for expenses.
Hold on, Colleen,
Yes,
you had a
sorry.
question?
I was looking at the investment income.
Isn't most of our investment income like in fixed securities? Like, can we kind of know how much we were going to profit from it?
At the point in time in which we developed the budget, so if you're remembering for the 24-25 budget, that was pretty well finalized towards the end of April of last year. By the time we get the bulk of our funds and invested, it's a good 6 months later after that. So, some of the predictions for investments and interest rates declining didn't materialize, and staff did a very good job in terms of going into fixed investments very early on, that when we did have a few cuts, the interest income wasn't affected at all because we already had our investments locked up in the early September to mid-September timeframe.
Okay, thank you.
End-of-year results, total expenses before fund balance commitments were $4.64 more than budgeted. This is due to the transfer of $2.1 million to capital reserve. A large portion of that transfer that was already done was based upon the additional state aid we received last September that was not known, as well as the positive investment results that we alluded to earlier. At this point, before final review of the balance sheets, there's a recommendation to transfer an additional $10.1 million proposed with the final 25 results to maximize the unassigned fund balance with the 8% cap to move that to capital reserve. One thing that this will be offset by, one of the big positives we've had this year, last year we talked about health insurance coming in over budget and over estimates. There was a very much of a positive claim experience this year, which led to a $2.5 million under budgetary estimates. So that was that up and down that we talked about, and one of the reasons why we've talked about an internal service fund for the direct claims. Contingency utilization was $1.4 million less than budgeted as well. We have some charts on here for the revenue results as compared to projected. A new line is where I was mentioning the other financing sources. That is that GASB 96 piece of information I referenced earlier. And you can also see the usage of about $2.35 million of committed fund balance for debt reserve as proposed in the budget. Moving on, some of the highlights. We are still at an 80, 19.5, and just under 1% split between local, state, and federal. So when we're talking about the federal layoffs in the federal budgets and the state budget impasse, it's not affecting us as much as it might be a different district that may be 50-50 funded or similar. This is, the concerning slide. So if there is something, we've always got to give you a little bit of bad news. And looking across that, our growth estimates for earned income tax are between 2.5% and 3%. And that's been pretty historical as towards the growth levels. And you can see that is very, very consistent with what we've seen and we've experienced. We have about a 3.5% 10-year average growth, even with the spike of the high inflation. But noting that the earned income tax actually grew at about 1.5% for 24-25. That is a continued significant decline over the last few years. We're hoping that stabilizes back, but we're monitoring that over the course of the next year, as that is about a 10% funding source for the district. The general fund expense highlights, we've shown you these as well. Going through, again, the bulk of the increase I explained earlier is due to the $12 million for the proposed and the actual transfer to date to the capital reserve. And you'll see the $2.124 million for the long-term software lease costs. That's the other side of the entry I mentioned a couple slides previous. And then looking at the expenses, and as we explained before, health insurance as well as transfers and contingencies were positive experience for the budget. You can see payroll was budgeted within 1%, the actual experience versus what was in the budget. So this is the preliminary unassigned fund balance number. Again, we just got these balance sheets today. We'll go through them again. But you can see with the transfers, we're bringing it underneath the 8% cap. And so the change in the general fund balance, these are the different components of it. As you'll see, the general fund committed fund balance for health insurance, that is what is being proposed to move off of the general fund and move to internal service fund. The impact of that will be a few years ago before we became self-insured and paid the direct claims. When we paid an insurance premium, we paid it to the insurance company. And then if there was positive or negative results, it didn't impact our financial statements. Now with the direct claims, it has been, but moving to a internal service fund, it'll be like the general fund is paying premiums to the internal service fund, and then the volatility that we've discussed the last few years will be down in the internal service fund rather than in the general fund. Pressures, risks, major changes to budget projections. Health insurance and claims administrative expenses will be moved out of the general fund to that internal service fund, as mentioned. Park Forest Middle School construction and the district-wide facilities master plan are going to impact the budget going forward. Positive revenue impacts, as we discussed, the real estate income tax and investment income, they are also appearing strong fairly early on in the 25-26 fiscal year. However, the interim billings were not very strong as they were over the same time period. Inflationary, deflationary environment, inflation has lessened significantly but has not subsided. I mean, I think a big key of that is the tariffs, which we are monitoring. We mentioned that within the construction costs. Real estate taxes, again, they do not grow with inflation, and they represent almost 60% of our budget. And then the earned income tax revenue only grew at 1.5% in 24-25, and it's been a continued decline for the last 3 years. Not necessarily surprising, but something to be monitoring over the course of the next budget cycle. We also have the board resolution coming up and key reporting dates. So for the board resolutions, key points, transfer $10.1 million to the capital reserve fund for future capital projects. transfer the committed fund balance of $9.4 million, enough for the 6 months of claims which the board has previously set, to an internal service fund. Maintain the debt service committed fund balance consistent with the previous year's budget projections. This year's at $25 million would be the end of fiscal year 25 balance, and maintain the unassigned general fund balance within the 8% maximum. So the board proposed resolution would look such as this. And again, this will be also in the memo on there. Moving on, the capital reserve fund. Again, if we would make that $10 million transfer, the ending fund balance will be approximately $76 million. Current projects, we are just finishing up in fiscal year 26, the physical plant building, as well as Mount Indian Elementary School. And then we also have future projects with the Park Forest Middle School, as well as the district-wide facilities master plan, which is going to be populated fairly soon. And then the key review and reporting dates, as you can see right here, is the preliminary financials, and then we will be approving them or looking to have them approved at the next meeting along with the fund balance resolution. So I know I went through a lot and fairly quickly, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Board members?
I'm just going to say thank you so much. It's really great to have such an awesome financial team that is budgeting things so appropriately, that we're hitting our marks, and when we have some surprises, we're able to make use of them. I just really appreciate that you really hit the mark with the budgeting. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, with the increased volatility we've had with staffing, whether it be the notable need to add positions in recent years versus sometimes not being able to fill them, it's kind of a harder mark to hit, and to be within 1% on those costs are pretty remarkable. So that's great.
And if I can, it's not only our office, it's also the Human Resources Office. We work and go back and forth with them over and over again. A lot of work went in with the changes in the contracts and everything, and this is a result of a lot of teamwork.
That's great. Yeah, and I mean, like you said, when contingency changes work out in our benefit, that's nice. Although I agree with the concern about, it's nice to sometimes have those big buildings and then get that tax transfer that happens one time, and we get that little bump and it makes things look really good, but it's just so unpredictable, so difficult to know when it's going to come. And seeing the earned income tax, which is something we usually steadily rely upon, to see that trending downward, have inflation continue to be static, have tariffs be an issue, and potential economic impacts for our whole community it's a little bit nail biter, but we'll see how that continues to shape up. Anything else from other board members? Okay, thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We do have on the agenda there was an update about the solar power purchase project, but unfortunately, our board members that participate in that are not going to be able to be with us this evening, so hopefully you were able to review that. And if you have some questions you want to generate and hold on to, we'll hopefully have a more in-depth discussion about that when we have the key people at the table to address some things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just note that we set a meeting so that the
you guys were able. I wasn't sure who was able to be there. I know that Peter had been there, but he's not able to be with us tonight.
Right. We're all getting on page, and we have a meeting set up to do so. Yes,
that's great news.
Yeah,
you're welcome to add anything that you would like.
I was there for part of the meeting. I think the first presentation, Jesse, I know, was there just as an observer.
I was there for most of the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But at the moment, my summary of it would be to read this memo out.
Yeah.
But I think just to make it clear to the community that obviously there have been discussion points and concerns about, a lot of that is described in the memo. We are aware of it. And once we have a more complete board in a little bit of time, I think we'll be ready to address that.
Agreed. And it seems like it's not 100% clear as of yet, just so. So there's still questions to be answered, so. All right. Well, then that will conclude our committee of the whole portion of the meeting. We now have a second opportunity for public comment. Do we have anyone online who wants to make a public comment? Anyone here in person? Okay. Then we're going to move on to our consent agenda. This includes several items that we'll address in a single motion for approval. To facilitate any questions from board members, we'll run through each category. Any changes to the minutes? That's a rare occurrence. For operations, we've got BJC rental for the senior prom, an update to our CTC advisory committee stakeholders, some routine district bills, human resources. As Mr. Johnson mentioned, we're still looking for coaches, so please reach out to your friends, as well as physical plant and technology routine approvals. Any questions?
I just wanted to say, since it's on the agenda, just to thank you to all of our advisory committees, the CTC, the LAC, the OACs. Obviously, it's a volunteer position, but those hours are much appreciated, and I know Ben Morden really appreciates that as well.
Absolutely. They're valuable input from our community. All right. Anything with the instructional programs? There's some student travel. I can't believe it feels like school just started and we're already approving travel to state championships for our cross-country team. That's pretty impressive, and the clock just keeps getting faster and faster. Any other questions? Last call? All right. Then I'll call for a motion to approve the consent agenda items 10 through 12 as presented.
Miller, so moved.
Barlow, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Last opportunity for questions. Any public comment on the consent agenda? All right, then, board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that takes care of the consent agenda. We've got 3 action items we're going to get through. To wrap up our evening, we're going to start off with agenda item 13A, a motion to approve new course recommendations for 2026-2027. This is shown in attachment 13A.
Have so moved.
Anderson, second.
Okay, we had a presentation and discussed these in detail at our last meeting. Any newer questions that have come up since then? Okay, do we have any public comment on our new course recommendations for the following school year? No. All right. Board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that item is passed. Agenda item 13B is a motion to accept a gift agreement for the high school north wrestling room renovations, attachment 13B.
Have so moved.
Anderson, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. We've also heard a little bit about this item in the past. Any questions or concerns? All right, any public comment on this item? No. All right, board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that item is passed. Last, agenda item 13C is a motion to approve an agreement with, or did we? We took that one off. I'm sorry, so that we did. I knew there were 3, so that was the one that was bumped. So now we'll get to our third one. Is agenda item 13D, a motion to approve the purchase of a scoreboard for the high school north gymnasium, shown in attachment 13D.
Have so moved. But it's
Anderson,
actually
second.
listed as C on the agenda.
Oh, yeah, it would be
online.
C because we bumped that last one.
To
Thank you for the
clarify.
correction. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's okay. I've been up since 4 a.m. traveling, so I was not going to catch that one tonight. All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, Deb, great. Any questions? This is a generous donation to update our scoreboard in that facility. Okay, any public comment on this item? No. All right, board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that will definitely now complete our agenda items for action. It'll also conclude our agenda for this evening. Looking ahead to future meetings, we have October 23rd. That's Policy Development Committee. That's at 10:30 here in the Panorama Village Boardroom. October 27th will be our regular board meeting at 7 p.m. here at Panorama Village. And with that, I'd like to adjourn the meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors to a brief executive session. Have a good night, everyone. We're adjourned.